Well, good evening. This is the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of April 27th, 2021. We've had to limit the physical access in the meeting room due to current limitations on public gatherings, and accommodations been made to ensure that the public is able to participate in the meeting. Here are the ways you can participate: Franklin TV or City of Franklin website, or you can live stream to the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts. There is a conference call number, 312-626-6799, with a meeting ID of 985-468-5871, with a passcode of 744214. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. There is limited viewing available in City Hall. The public may email comments and questions prior to 3:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting to the recorder at franklintn.gov to be read aloud. Live comments and those submitted by email will be limited to 2 minutes. Here's the links you need: youtube.com/user city of Franklin. Our Facebook is facebook.com/city of Franklin, or the website is franklintn.gov/Franklin TV. This meeting is called to order, and I'm going to call the roll. So Alderman Barnhill. Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Schroer.
Here.
Alderman Speedy.
Present.
Alderman McClendon.
Present.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Blanton, I saw you a minute ago.
I'm here. Sorry, I got booted for a second.
Okay, no problem. Alderman Peterson
Here.
and Vice Mayor Berger. And I saw Vice Mayor Berger a minute ago. I don't see her right now. So we'll go ahead and go to item number 1, which is Resolution 2021-66, declaring that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen members shall meet on April 27th, 2021 for work session and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location because necessary to protect health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID outbreak. Yes, I have you recorded as present. So is there a motion on item 1?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhill. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alderman Schroer. Any discussion on it? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Berger. Are you there, Vice Mayor? I think she must be having some trouble. We'll now go to citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody who wants to speak to this body tonight? Nobody's on the phone. We have no emails. We'll move on to work session discussion items. We'll start out with a presentation of the U.S. Army line marker proposal by the Civil War Historical Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Amanda Rose with the City of Franklin Planning Department. I don't have to say City of Franklin to you guys, sorry. The Civil War Historical Commission has a subcommittee that is working on a proposal for your consideration for further research and discussion. It is on marking the U.S. line. I do have on the call here today Rachel Finch, who is the chair of the Civil War Historical Commission. And we did invite the subcommittee chair, Dr. Sam Gant. He was on the call a few moments ago, but I'm not sure if he's still on the call right now. He may have similar issues to the vice mayor and getting reception. So I would like to turn over the presentation to Rachel Finch, if she wouldn't mind.
No. Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As Amanda said, I am Rachel Finch. I am the chair this year for the Civil War Historical Commission for the City of Franklin. And we serve as the advisory body to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the City Administrator in the identification, preservation, interpretation, maintenance, and recognition of battlefields and sites related to all aspects of Civil War history within the City of Franklin in order to protect and maintain the city's irreplaceable historic wealth for this and for future generations. And so we are coming to you tonight with a proposal that has been in the works for multiple years now, and that is the identification and demarcation of the United States Army line during the Battle of Franklin. And the purpose of this project is to really bring about where the U.S. line was located during the battle, and place this project within the full scope of not only just the battle, but also the Civil War. And we believe that by doing this, the project will provide a better understanding of the extent and the impact of the battle on the community, and introduce visual cues and gain a sense of how much the landscape has evolved over time. And I think that this is a remarkable project, particularly because of all of the battlefield reclamation that has occurred over the past 20 years to help us better understand the battle itself. So next slide. So what we are proposing is the markers to appear just like this. They would be overall 4 to 6 feet in height. And then we would also obviously have the details cast with the U.S. Army line outlined on both sides with a Civil War cannon silhouette. And Dr. Gant, who is not on the call right now, has been very instrumental in creating the design for these obelisks that would help denote where the federal line stretched from one side of South Franklin to the other, which is roughly over 2 miles.
Rachel, Mr. Gann is on the call now.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay.
So our next slide. So as I mentioned, the line stretched a good bit of way from West Franklin all the way over into what is now the Lewisburg Historic District. That's a grand total of 2 miles. And we have roughly 13 spots that we think would be important to denote where the federal line should be marked. And with the help of Eric Jacobson, who's the CEO of the Battle of Franklin Trust, and also an expert on the Battle of Franklin, he helped our subcommittee with the historical mission to navigate and determine exactly where these obelisks should be placed to denote the federal line. And then we do have the cost estimates for a set of 24 obelisks and pedestals. And as you can see, we have estimated the cost to be about $11,000. That would include shipping for the sets as well.
Dr. Gann, is there anything in particular you'd like to note about the cost estimate?
Yes, I would like to give, am I coming through?
Yes.
My
Yes.
face hasn't shown up. A number of years ago, the concept of the trench line markers was introduced by Robin Hood, then chairman of the Battlefield Task Force. He proposed the placing of the granite obelisks at the Franklin Street intersections of the 1864 U.S. Army trench line. The task force saw the granite markers as prohibitively expensive, and about the same time, the remains of a Civil War soldier were uncovered on Columbia Avenue, drawing the attention of the task force from the proposed markers. In 2014, when the Battlefield Preservation Commission took up the subject of trench line markers, it was quickly decided that a more affordable material must be used for the markers. Ornamental concrete, like that used on the street name post, was determined to be a good solution. With a sketch of the proposed trench line markers, the request for bids was placed with 4 prospective vendors. The 2014 bids for 24 obelisk trench markers plus shipping were $28,800, $24,400, $20,400, and the D&D Ornamental Concrete Company at $7,000. A few months ago, we requested from D&D an updated bid. The bid as shown on the screen was $9,800. And we figure with additional expenses that it would be, the total will be approximately $11,000 to $12,000. Are there any questions?
We're going to continue the presentation, Dr.
Okay.
Gant.
All right. Next slide. The Civil War Historical Commission plans to find information about the project on the City of Franklin website utilizing a story map. The map will demonstrate the locations of the markers, provide a history on the U.S., well, on the troop movements. It'll be both U.S. and Confederate in order to what is designated by the markers themselves. Next slide. The Civil War Historical Commission requests that BOMA fund 50% of the marker costs, not to exceed $10,000, with the remaining match from local nonprofits and individuals. We already have one organization and 2 individuals who have proposed to purchase the markers. So we hope it can be made available to individuals. City funds are proposed in the fiscal year 2022 budget that will cover up to $11,500. So support the city for installation of markers is also requested.
Rachel, would you like to cover the last slide?
Yes, I will.
you.
I'll go ahead with it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gant.
The Civil War Historical Commission requests that the BOMA allows the commission and the designated subcommittee to move forward with the requisite research as follows. Required approvals for implementation on state routes as transportation art. Public support for the project, including property owners adjacent to the affected public right-of-ways, and determination of any necessary easements for market placement and support from affected property owners. So I think that concludes our slides.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Gant and Rachel Finch, for providing that presentation. We are happy to answer any questions that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen may have, and we would like your input on whether or not this project should move forward with the research that Dr. Gant listed on the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda and Rachel and Dr. Gant. So and we appreciate the hard work that's been done to bring this to us. And any questions from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen? Go ahead, Alderman Blanton.
I'm just curious. I know it was referred to as transportation art, but also as public art in another arena. Is this something that needs to go? It's funny, I don't think it would go before Public Art Commission because it's already here. So I don't know I don't know where that stands. I'm just curious because I'm on the Public Arts Commission.
Well, Alderman Blanton, thank you for that question. It is transportation art as defined by the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the state routes. We do have a number that are on state and a number that are on local that would not require TDOT review. I believe that the subcommittee thought that these might be of interest to the community as public art pieces as well. I don't know that we have codified whether or not this would be something that would go before the Public Art Commission, but I think that the subcommittee would like to bring it forward at least for a discussion with the Public Art Commission, is my understanding. Rachel, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Amanda. I believe that if Alderman Blanton feels that this is something that the Public Art Commission should have a voice in, that as our subcommittee with the Civil War Historical Commission, we should bring that before the Public Arts Commission for at least their review and for seeking their approval.
As it's a new committee, I'm trying to make sure that, as Monique's
Right.
with us, I'm not saying it should or shouldn't. I just want to make sure that we're being consistent across the board with how we're, treating different things. So
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Good
And they will be
suggestion.
going, and that's a good suggestion, Alderman Blanton.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
And I've got a couple comments.
And I've got one.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Alderman Shore, and from that, after that, we'll go to Alderman Barnhill.
Okay, a couple. One is there's a huge difference in cost between this one and the other ones that were quoted. That always makes me nervous. And has anybody seen what any of these look like in real life? To make sure they're compatible with what we think it ought to look like. And then finally, I'll let you all answer one time. I know TDOT has a big issue, and I think we need to think about it, having something like concrete near the road in the right of way. There are safety issues there, and I'm thinking it's something that we as a city need to look at as well. If we're going to put them in the city right of way near a curb or whatever, and they're concrete, that concrete doesn't give all that much. And so I think it's something we've really got to look at. TDOT usually requires breakaway stuff. And this obviously isn't going to be breakaway. So I'll just throw that out, and it's something I think as a city we have to look at.
Thank you, Alderman Shore. I appreciate those comments. I have been working with some preliminary research with representatives from TDOT, and I've also worked with our engineering department. I believe that they had come up with a solution that would meet the breakaway requirements, and we did provide some clear zone exhibits. I'm not sure if Paul is on the line or not, but he did assist us with some preliminary information for different representatives from TDOT.
Yes, I am here. We did spec a breakaway design to it. It was part of the requirement, obviously, going through TDOT in the clear zone. So we've done that on both city and state routes.
Thank you, Paul. And I believe that Dr. Gant did get some photographs of similar ornamental obelisk that were from the vendor that he is providing the estimate from. The estimates that he listed in his discussion were related to some of the more granite fixtures and then other fixtures that are much larger. As Ms. Finch noted, these are 4 feet 6 inches in height, so they are much smaller than some of the others that were quoted.
Well, they're $250 a piece.
I understand.
You can't hardly do anything for $250. So I just question that.
Well, we can certainly provide you more information on how those would look if that's something you'd like.
May I address that?
I think I'd like to, before I voted for it, I'd like to see what they look like. I think we all would like to see.
Of course.
Alderman Barnhill.
I think Alderman Shore may have answered, they asked 1 or 2 questions. Mine was, I was a little confused on the cost. The cost was $11,000, but then it was mentioned that the city's half portion would be not to exceed $10,500. And just clear, if I misunderstood that, clear that up for me, because half of 11 would not be 10.5.
You're doing old math, not new math.
That's a great question, Alderman Barnhill. Thank you for that. The Civil War Historical Commission did provide a recommendation to you, and the recommendation was provided before all of the estimates were finalized. And so the recommendation was that it would be willing to work to find folks that would contribute from local nonprofits and other individuals, and that the city cost for the project would not exceed the $10,000. We can certainly look to different materials or different appearances if that's something that is of concern to the board, and that may affect the price point, but the commission feels comfortable with the 50-50 match not to exceed 10,000. Rachel, is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? We're ready to move on. We appreciate the hard work and we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
Special event permit for 2021 Heritage Foundation Main Street Festival to be held on July 17th and 18th in downtown Franklin. Is there any questions or comments about that? I did notice we had Liz Zink with us tonight from the Downtown Merchants Association and the Heritage Foundation.
As you see in
We
the,
do have Liz. Sorry, go ahead.
go
There's
ahead.
Melissa.
It's okay. I think Eric wants to speak. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is there have been some modifications from a typical Main Street Festival, not just the date, to provide for some further accommodations. This has been worked through with our special events team, and we're comfortable that this is a good balance in terms of reopening to a community event, but providing for some safeguards. So if Liz or the Melissa or Monique, who worked on it from the special events team, want to add to it, welcome them to do that.
We'll keep moving forward then. Item 4 is Street Department Main Street Sidewalk Repair Project. And we're going to defer that till the next Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting that's been requested. So we'll pass over that one. And that date of the next meeting is May 11th. Okay. Item 5 is Resolution 2021-58, consideration of initiating the annexation by referendum process and draft plan of services for the annexation of 110 Spencer Creek Road and 112 Spencer Creek Road and 2021 Old South Berries Chapel Road.
Hi, Mayor and Alderman. I am the newest planner with Planning and Sustainability. My name is Chelsea Randolph, and I'm actually going to be presenting this proposal. The city has received annexation requests for 3 properties near the Fieldstone Farms commercial node. They're located outside of the UGB, but they are contiguous to the city limits. So back in May of 2018, a BOMA special work session was held to present and discuss annexation and growth priorities. The proposed properties do not fall within any of the growth priority areas, but they are adjacent to the Central Franklin Basin. So the Central Franklin Basin is designated as a long-term capability area. The Central Franklin Basin is designated long-term because the only remaining areas in the basin are not already annexed into the city is an existing single-family subdivision. Annexation for these properties cannot occur until a referendum has been held. So where a majority of the property owners requesting annexation vote to have their property annexed by the city of Franklin. So the resolution authorizes the request of Williamson County Election Commission to hold a referendum on October 26, 2021. And a full timeline of the annexation by referendum was attached as an exhibit with this request. Staff recommends an initial zoning of estate residential until Envision Franklin can be updated to evaluate the most appropriate land uses for the properties, because the properties to be annexed are located outside of the UGB. The applicant intends to build single-family residential homes on the properties. Staff sees this as an appropriate use, and it would add single-family residential, which was noted as in a deficit in the 2020 development report. A draft plan of services has been prepared by staff and attached as an exhibit. The draft plan of services identifies that the analysis of the existing sewer system, if annexation moves forward, may be a limiting factor in determining how many homes would be allowed on the property. So the following, in addition, the following overlay zoning districts have been identified for the property. They may affect future development. Those overlays are the flood fringe overlay, the floodway overlay, and land within 500 feet of the hillside hillcrest overlay. The proposed annexation area will need to be studied to determine the overlays that apply. And in regards to sanitation and services and recycling pickup, access to the properties will be limited because there's only one way in from city right of way, and it's currently unimproved right of way. These properties include the future roadway Fieldstone Parkway extension, which is referred to as Project 83 and listed in Connect Franklin. There's currently unimproved right of way to the south of Fieldstone Farms subdivision. Any redevelopment of the properties shall require the roadway to be extended through as shown in Connect Franklin. Additionally, the properties are currently adjacent to existing county right-of-way extensions, but recent decisions by the Highway Commission lead staff to believe that connection to these street stubs will be limited to emergency access only. So the limited connectivity may limit allowable density on these properties. Staff does support further investigation of the potential of the annexation request due to its proximity to the city limits and its accessibility to existing city infrastructure. This concludes my presentation. I'm available and a couple of other staff members are available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chelsea. Nice job. Any questions from staff? From the Board of Mayor and Alderman.
What is the acreage?
Mayor, do you mind if I make a couple of comments? This is Greg.
If you know how many acres, go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Yes, I do. The total acreage of these 3 tracts of land is 60.18 acres. The neighborhood just to the north of this is currently served by the City of Franklin Sewer. It's on a low pressure system. And we have done a capacity analysis. We've been working with Ben McNeil on this for a few months now. It appears as though there is capacity for about 30 houses. My client's intentions are 1 home for every 2 acres of land.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mayor,
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I think in looking at the location of this and looking at where it is, I think it's super important that we have connectivity, whether it's to the county road or whatever. And I see it would appear as if there's just one way to get in, and that's through, I guess, would be the east side of Fieldstone Farms. And we continue to annex, we continue to allow for emergency exits and this and that. I think it's incumbent upon us to look at as strongly as we can look, connecting to the county roads on this right here, especially if it's 1 unit to 2 acres. That's probably less dense than what the county's development is to the north of that then. But that would be my observation on this and looking at it. And it's one of the things that it comes up every time we have some annexation or rezoning or whatever. So let's just look at that, think about where we are on this. And if it's possible, whatever, we need to look at connectivity, and certainly connectivity, at least one place on some of those county roads to the north of us. They belong to the taxpayer. They belong to the citizens of Franklin as well as to the county.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
Okay, I see that some of them dead end to the kind of the 2 parcels to the west, but on Southbury Chapel, or whatever that is, quarter, I can't that. Are there roads down in there right now, or are those just people's driveways?
I believe those are just driveways, Alderman Peterson. There's not
Old Barry's Chapel Court. You think those are just driveways?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think the right of way ends right at the property line.
Okay, the right of way then is the property line. Okay, but are there homes there already? I couldn't tell from the picture here, from the aerial view.
There's one home on the property today, and the others are more agricultural barns.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep
I
moving
just got
forward.
one. Is this all Cal Turner's property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the one residential is his house?
He does own that house. His main house, the house he lives in, is to the south of that in the city of Franklin. It kind of sits up on top of a hill to the right.
Okay. All right.
So,
It kind of sits up on top of a hill.
I can share a map if you want me to show you specifically.
It has a 360-degree view of 6 counties. It kind of sits on a hill.
It kind of sits up there.
Hey, listen, and you'll like this. That's from the bathroom on the top floor.
I've been in it.
I have too.
And in the view, and that's when you're not watching a movie in the theater.
Go ahead, Alderman Vice Mayor Berger.
Oh, this is too fun. I need to listen to this. Hey, so staff, it says at the end, staff supports further investigation of this potential annexation request due to the proximity to the city limits and accessibility to existing infrastructure. So where do we go from here tonight? And have we talked to the county about this since it's not in our UGB?
Well, we haven't talked to the county yet, but that would be a part of it, is that if there is access needed for roadways, that we have an interlocal agreement. Because it doesn't go through any county properties, we may not need that, but that'll come probably within the next step. And as Chelsea said, there is an attachment on your staff report that walks through the next steps. You would have to do a resolution to request a referendum be held. And the referendum vote would be October 26th. Is that right, Chelsea? Yeah, I see a head nod. Thank you.
Which we don't have a meeting that day, I don't think.
No, that's the municipal election for ward alderman as well. So it would just be an added item onto that election. So it would not be any additional cost other than what we already have planned. And again, this is initiating the process. So this starts us looking at it. We don't require county approval, but we'd certainly coordinate and work with them around the plan of service specifically. And this would give you a chance to understand it more fully. We would have a public hearing and vote on the initiation on May 25th as this moves forward.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not opposed to going ahead and studying this further, but also I agree with Clyde about the connectivity. I'm all for that. Thanks.
One quick question, Mayor, is does the whole city vote on that?
No, only the property owners.
So only
and the residents if they're different, but
only Cal.
Whoever the property owners and anybody else that might live on that property.
Wonder if he'll get it.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask one other question?
Go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
There was a mention of floodplain in here, and I was unable to see what area this involves.
Yes, that was a great question. Those three are just an estimated potential areas that the overlays could be in. That's just something that's kind of part of the next step would be just evaluating whether they would fall in those. just based on the surrounding areas, I made an assessment that those may be consulted while trying to move forward with the annexation in order for them to fall underneath the correct overlay.
Because
Alderman
Spencer
Peters.
Creek, I was going to say Spencer Creek.
I believe it's at the north. We don't have the overlays mapped outside our urban growth boundary. So you have to kind of make the assumption like Chelsea did of where it would most likely fall. It's because it's outside the urban growth boundary that we don't have that mapped.
Thank you.
Okay, great questions. We'll move on. Item 6 is Resolution 2021-59, consideration of initiating the annexation process and draft plan of services for annexation of 4416 Paytonsville Road, establishing a public hearing on May the 25th, 2021.
This is my project also. This property that's being considered is east of the intersection of Long Lane and Paytonsville Road, which turns into Goose Creek Bypass, located at 4416 Paytonsville Road. The property is owned by the city of Franklin. It is contiguous to the city limits and within the city's urban growth boundary, or UGB. It is within the regional commerce design concept as defined by Envision Franklin. Envision Franklin states that development and the regional commerce design concept should transition in intensity and scale across this design concept. Higher intensity uses should be located closer to the I-65 interchanges and major thoroughfares, with less intensive uses transitioning to established residential areas. Envision Franklin also states that new development should be designed to maintain scenic views of the surrounding hills, and buildings should be subordinate to nearby hillsides and hill crests. So in May 2018, a BOMO special work session was held to present and discuss annexation and growth priorities. 2 drainage basins were identified as having short-term capability for annexation: the West Basin and then the Goose Creek Basin. This property is within the Goose Creek Basin. Additionally, the extension of Paytonsville Road to Long Lane crosses this property. There is currently no proposed development on the site, and a draft plan of services has been prepared by staff and attached as an exhibit. The draft plan of services details no major concerns, and with the recent development of the City of Franklin's Fire Station number 7 adjacent to this property, annexation is supported. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Questions or comments? We're requesting it since we own it?
Yes, sir. We are requesting annexation of our property.
Just a quick question. Is there going to have to be voting?
No, ma'am.
No, I'm sorry, on a referendum.
No, ma'am. This is actually, we'll just go to public hearing because it's contiguous and within our UGB.
And the owner is requesting it.
Yes,
For what reason?
I imagine we would vote for it
Yes.
if there was one.
Well, we had an opportunity to acquire this property a couple years ago, knowing that it may be beneficial for road extension there long-term. And so we knew we would never get it for a lower cost than we could at that time. So we went ahead and acquired it, and it just makes sense to go ahead and bring it into the city so that we can fully manage it or handle it as we go forward.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I felt like something cryptic was going on.
Nope, it just kind of presented itself as we were looking at the Fire Station 7 development, and this just makes sense as a logical step forward.
That's not much land to add a road.
There's other property in and around that area, so it made sense to control it.
Adam? Item 7, consideration resolution 2021-48, consideration of initiating the annexation by referendum process and draft plan of services for the annexation of 4432 Pratt Lane and 4448 Campbell Road, establishing a public hearing May 25th, 21.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is another annexation by referendum initiation request. So similar to the other annexation request that Chelsea told you about. So these are two properties, both the purple, you can see on the map here, letter A and then letter B towards the south. So this resolution authorizes the request to Williamson County Election Commission to hold a referendum in conjunction with the October 26, 2021 Franklin municipal election. And a full timeline is included for you to review. Because the properties to be annexed are located outside of the UGB, staff recommends an initial zoning of estate residential until Envision Franklin can be updated to evaluate the most appropriate land uses for the property, should the properties be annexed. The property at 4432 Pratt Lane, which is letter A on the map, is within close proximity to other parcels that were annexed into the city limits in 2020 and does partially fill in a donut hole created by those annexations. Lot B at 4448 Campbell Road causes significant issues with extending city services and utilities to that particular parcel. A full list of concerns from the various city departments who serve this property is included in the draft plan of services. However, the applicant has indicated that they are withdrawing the request for 4448 Campbell Road. So as of right now, staff recommends the resolution be revised to exclude 4448 Campbell Road from the annexation initiation. That resolution will be updated prior to the public hearing in a month. So with all that in mind, staff recommends approval of resolution 2021-48 to amend and exclude 4448 Campbell Road. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? We'll keep moving along. How about resolution 2021-47, initiating the annexation process and draft plan of services for the annexation of 4325 Long Lane, establishing a public hearing May 25th, 21.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This does not require a vote or referendum, so keep that in mind. It is contiguous to the city limits and it is within the city's urban growth boundary. It is within the regional commerce design concept as defined by Envision Franklin, which contains has transition in intensity and scale across the design concept with higher intensity located closer to I-65 and major thoroughfares, with less intensive uses transitioning to established residential areas. The draft plan of services details no major concerns in providing infrastructure and services to the property. So staff recommends approval of resolution 2021-47. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
I do too.
I've got Alderman Martin and Alderman Barnhill.
Joey, are these parcels, the extra parcels that we looked at in 2020? You know, we had the 29 properties that wanted to come in then, but we annexed those. But what are these that are coming up? Are these just their neighbors that are wanting annexation now?
Well, the parcel we're discussing now is within the urban growth boundaries. So it was not a part of the outside the UGB annexation request we received last year or the year before. So this one is within the urban growth boundary and is contiguous to the city limits.
This is right by the Refuge Center property?
Yes. Right across from Highlands at Lad Park.
Alderman Barnhill.
I think Eric answered my question. I wanted to know how close it was to the Refuge Center. And if it's appropriate, who owns the property and what's the acreage?
I can answer that, Mayor.
Go ahead,
Mr. Campbell. The property is owned by Keith Baker, and he does not have development plans at this time. Has talked a little bit about potential for some office, but really kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the office markets here in Franklin.
Acreage? Did you say how many acres, Craig? I think that was
I
the
did not.
question.
Joey, I didn't
Say
have that.
8.46 at the top.
Yeah, there you go,
Yes.
8.46.
I see it.
Okay. Any other questions? You ready to move on to item 9? Consideration resolution 2021-80, a resolution to rename 3rd Avenue Extension to Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue and the driveway to the Hill property as ANC Williams Way. I did have the opportunity to bring this forward as a potential project for the board and have had a conversation with everyone indicating my intention to bring this forward. And during those conversations, several suggestions were made, and one was that we recognize somebody locally. And so that's when the ANC Williams Way was added. If you can imagine Sonic and then the old driveway that goes up to the Hill property. There is some confusion about what 3rd Avenue Extension is to some people and where it is. I don't know that renaming it completely solves that problem, but it also is an opportunity for us to continue to tell the fuller story and also be a board initiative. This has not been requested by anybody that I'm aware of other than myself to bring it forward. This is an area that the city owns all of the property. There is no problem with street numbers, and so that makes it a little easier. It does run through a significant area of our city where we're investing a significant amount of money in the future as far as the 3rd Avenue extended. And then, of course, we're in process as far as the Hill property, and that road would have some improvements when it would be named. If you're not familiar with ANC Williams, he was born a slave, became a free man. He became a businessman in the city of Franklin, was greatly respected. I think his business was on Main Street for over 60 years. Whenever there was a riot in Franklin in the early 1900s, he himself was partially responsible for trying to quell the riot at that time. He's currently buried in Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery. Both of these roads are in the area of Hard Bargain or terminate close to Hard Bargain and have views of Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery, and probably something we should explore as we look at the Hill property. Is there some way to consider accessing Toussaint L'Ouverture also, since that's such a historic property in our community? So that's my take on this, and I would enjoy comments if people want to make any. So I'll turn it over to the board to make comments.
Mayor, when I looked at the map of the drawing on that, the parcel that was being renamed was in red. So it actually begins at would be North Margin, where 3rd Avenue enters into North Margin, and then ends right over at 4th Avenue. So it does not go with the 5th Avenue. It's only the red portion. Am I correct?
I think that should go to 5th.
I think it should go to 5th.
I think that's an error in the map. It should go all the way.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. So
we need to. So
We'll
it does
fix
go
that.
from. So it does go from 3rd Avenue at would be North Margin over to 5th Avenue, right?
Yes.
you went mute there, Clyde.
I just know on the map, when I was looking at it in red, it did not show going to 5th Avenue.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Sure, go ahead, Alderman Blanton.
So I appreciate you bringing this forth. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to affect some change in a part of town that doesn't cause for people to change their mailing address, and that's the least of that, but it also recognizes where we are as a city. But when you called about this, which I think was great, I started pondering about different opportunities for someone local. I was one of the ones that brought that up. And while I think A&C Williams is an incredibly worthy recipient for this honor, one of the things that I realize is we're talking here recently about the Merrill Williams house on the corner of 11th and Natchez that where Mr. Williams once lived. I'm hoping that that will be supported and realized as the interpretive center that it's going to be. I started thinking about people who have made a great contribution to our community. And as we know, and most of the citizens don't know, our naming is hinged upon somebody who is no longer with us. And I thought about Toussaint L'Ouverture and Hard Bargain, and we have done a great job, and those before us, of naming roads in honor of historical people and generals and all of those things. And I think all of us refer to ourselves as a historic city, but we also like to think that we're progressive. And Tommy Murdoch came to mind. And I think about Tommy Murdoch, and I think about, he was the son of a Tuskegee airman. He lived his life in Franklin, Tennessee, and is a vital part of the African American Heritage Society. He is also a vital part of the recapturing of Toussaint, and he served on city boards and county boards. And I say this not as a debate, but I think that if we look at where we are as a generation, almost everything is named after people that we don't really know, but we read about. And Tommy's tentacles and roots go through this community. His son works in the court system at juvenile court. And a lot of the people that are still in town remember his contribution and his championship for racial reconciliation. So I offer it as an opportunity to be a little bit more current and honoring somebody who he passed away in 2015, I believe. And I don't know if anybody shares my sentiment for it to be something and it's not to take away from Mr. Williams and his contribution, but I think with what's going on right now, he's going to be honored for his contribution with that home. So I just throw that out there as somebody that I feel like Murdoch Way or something like that for people who know Tommy, that was his area that he really influenced and worked his self very, very hard on all those initiatives. And being an elected official, not an elected official, but a serving in City of Franklin, I thought it might be a good opportunity. So if anybody has any comment.
Someone had suggested A&C Williams, and that's why I grabbed onto it.
Yes,
certainly
sir.
There can be a process to pick a different name for that particular way, if that's the desire of the board.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
Tommy Murdoch was the chairman of the Franklin Planning Commission very early whenever I was on there. I think was he a county commissioner? I know he ran for alderman, but he was not elected.
Yes, ma'am, he was.
He was county commissioner.
But as I say, he was the chairman of the Franklin Planning Commission whenever when I'm serving on it. And I thought extremely highly of him. He was just one of the good people, and kind of never seemed like he met a stranger either.
He was a stargazer.
Yes, indeed. He was a really impressive astronomer, and that's the reason he moved out to wherever he and Deb moved to. I want to say like in Thompson Station, but that may not be right. But that's the reason he moved out there, because he was such an astronomer. And he, as I say, he had a lot of
I think he moved Mayberry
positive.
Station, something like Mayberry Station, something like that.
I need to interject this about Tommy. The night he was elected, the morning after the night he was elected county commissioner, his son Nick came to me in my classroom and said, my father got elected president last night. So I called him and I said, I want to thank President Murdy. So he not only is all these things you've mentioned, but he was also the president to me.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I think the two people that, the two names that you put forth are certainly worthy of those names and worthy of the recognition. I think there'll be opportunities for us to recognize other people. I really think that A.N.C. Williams and Martin Luther King was two, you know, they're there for a long time. And I really would stick with those. There'll be opportunities, other opportunities. There'll probably be some street names that you could probably name within the Hill Property Project itself, which could be Murdock Way or something other. But I'd recommend that the board, and if it gets down, I'm gonna support the two names that you presented. That's not to recognize Tommy Murdock. I served for several years with the joint Williamson County Franklin Parks and Recreation Committee that Tommy chaired, and highly respected. So it's not a matter of not respected. It's not a matter of that. I do think that the two names that you submitted were names that were presented to you and you thought those out. I would stick with those two.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Berger.
I think all of these names are worthy of being having our streets named after these gentlemen. My preference would be, and I was just reading, it says approximately 900 streets and cities across America have been named in honor of Dr. King. And why I have no opposition and I'm not opposed at all to naming street after Dr. King, I tend to lean towards the two local people for our local streets right now. And like Clyde said, there will be other opportunities. And maybe we hold off Dr. Martin Luther King for another opportunity and consider N.C. Williams and Tommy Murdock because of the contribution they both made to our community. And knowing that A.N.C. Murdock or A.N.C. Williams owned a business for 60 some years on longest owned business on Main Street. That's quite an accomplishment in where he came from and what he accomplished. So I'm in full support of it. I mean, I'll go with what the board wants to do. As I said, I'm not opposed to doing Martin Luther King at all. But I sort of tend to lean towards the two local people right now to honor them first.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments before we move on?
Mayor Scott Speedy here. I think I would probably concur with Alderman or Vice Mayor Berger. I'm not against the two names you threw out, but I guess just we are in the midst of a lot of the fuller story and telling a lot of our local history and honoring two people that contributed directly to the community here. I'd be in favor of those two, Murdock and Williams.
Thank you for your comments. We'll move on to item number 10 then, which is a resolution to declare Saturday closest to June 19th of each year as Juneteenth in the city of Franklin. This item was brought to me by the African American Heritage Society, who for the past 17 years plus have had Juneteenth, usually at the Macklemore House on an annual basis, and many of us have attended there, and many of us have donated cakes for their cakewalk and attended that particular event. Not only does that event raise money to help defray the cost of the celebration, but also they're very active at this time in renovating the Macklemore House, which has the African American Heritage Society Museum in it. And also they're very, very active as far as the Toussaint L'Ouverture Cemetery. So I commend the African American Heritage Society for bringing this to us. And I think this is an appropriate action to honor the work that they're doing in our community on these projects. So any comments there?
Mayor, I may make a comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Shore.
As you know, my wife, she may not even like this comment, but I think it's important that we all recognize that Juneteenth is a national celebration for the slaves in Texas finally hearing about being freed a year later after the end of the Civil War, and that's what Juneteenth is all about. So African American society doesn't own Juneteenth and doesn't act and doesn't say that they do. They just have always recognized it for the last 10 or 12 years. So I think the proclamation or the resolution should be just to make sure, which it says, that it's just the city of Franklin recognizes the closest Saturday to June 19th as the official Juneteenth day in Franklin. And I think that's how everybody needs to perceive that.
Thank you. And the next item adds a little more history, which has to do with a Juneteenth marker proposal to be placed in Pinkerton Park near the connection to Fort Granger. Because I think General Granger was the one that made the announcement in Texas. And so there is a little bit of a Franklin connection. Any questions from anybody on this? And there's Alma McLemore, so thank you for being on, Alma. Seeing none, we'll continue to move forward on item 12, which is the Parkland Impact Fee for City of Franklin Contract 2021-0067, payment of fee only agreement for South Vale between the City of Franklin and South Vale LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just fees only. It's an amount of a total of $2,203,648 for 512 dwelling units. Is located in Quadrant 2, which this would be assigned to the Southeast Municipal Complex at some point in time for a community park. Staff recommends approval.
Any questions or comments? Let's go to item 13, which is the Parkland Impact Fee Agreement with Adam Balash for 207 Fairground Street, City of Franklin Contract 2020-0337. Lisa?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is just fees only for 3 or 4 dwelling units. I believe it's 3 for a total amount of just $12,912. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. We'll keep moving. Item 14, discussion about the merits of restricting street vendors, performers, the sale of distribution of newspapers, magazines, periodicals, handbills, flyers, and similar activity within 50 feet of an approved outdoor cafe.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Alderman. Several weeks ago, I received a call from Steve Bacon at Harper Square indicating that the newly opened cafe that's on the corner of First and Main that has an outdoor dining area had concerns about the distribution of magazines, newspapers, and other activity at the intersection. Subsequent to that, around the same time, Alderman McClendon asked that I look and investigate the potential of an ordinance, which I did with Shauna. And we've concluded that we could, we have a draft ordinance in your packet, but we're seeking guidance on proceeding with an amendment to the municipal code that would restrict street vendors, performers, the sale or distribution of newspapers, magazines, et cetera, within 50 feet of a permitted outdoor cafe. We would, as a city, install signage in those rare instances where this is a potential problem. There are plenty of intersections for this type of solicitation and activity to be performed legally. But given the limit on or the encroachment into the public sidewalk we want to make sure that the passageway, which is generally between 4 and 5 feet, remains open for the public. Your guidance is appreciated.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Alderman Clinton.
I'm always cognizant of the law of unintended consequences. Perhaps a map of where this would prohibit the activity would be helpful in our discussion.
I could prepare one based on the existing outdoor cafes. They are all located in our downtown historic district. So I can pull that up and we can ask somebody from our GIS team to provide that illustration in your packet if it's decided to move this on to the voting meeting in 2 weeks.
I think that would be helpful. I don't want to unreasonably restrict the activity. So I think it might be helpful for us to know where the ordinance would apply before we take it any further.
I will certainly do that. And also this would be, the signage would be installed on a case-by-case basis because some intersections don't have this type of activity or are attractive for this type of activity. So we would only install the signage where, the encroachment and use of the public sidewalk that has this limited passageway, it would be applied to. But I'll put a map together for the next meeting. Thank you.
And Vernon, don't we already have some type of city ordinance where you can't block the public sidewalks? I know we had personal experience where a couple of the Speedy girls were selling Girl Scout cookies downtown and they had to move their booths.
It does. And as we looked at ordinances in other communities, Chattanooga being one, we don't want to infringe on the free speech of people that distribute or sell magazines, periodicals, and what have you. What we're trying to do is be narrowly focused in those areas that we have limited passageway, but it's really not blocking when somebody's walking or pulling a stroller. It's really if something's set up, that's more of a permanent encroachment. It's something we don't see too often in the city.
Mayor, I've got a quick comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Schroer.
I tend to agree with Dana about unintended consequences. I'm assuming like the Irish pub and 55 South are approved, those type of restaurants, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think if you do a direct interpretation of that, it would have an impact on some of our street events. And because if you use the 50 foot, then you've got, as an example, the Main Street Festival, there's all sorts of that stuff going on within 50 feet of those cafes. So you may have to have some language in the ordinance that would exclude sanctioned events by the city of Franklin or something like that.
We can certainly look at that. There is a specific permit that is issued related to special events. We can see how those intersect on this proposal.
Mayor.
Please go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I think Dana's request for the intersections or whatever that would possibly be impacted by this 50 foot is certainly appropriate before we vote on this. We need to look at this. I'm not sure. I was trying to figure out, I'm assuming that I'm assuming this is directed towards First Avenue North and East Main Street. Am I correct on that? Is that the corner? Is that the intersection?
On the corner of First and Main, where Harpus Square is, yes. And the cafe and the Italian restaurant, that area.
Well, they're not in the sidewalk. The cafe is not in the sidewalk, are they?
Yes, they are. Yes.
And,
Okay.
it brought the question, but it is a broader issue. That's why we're looking at it, not just at one
And
location.
I'm fine with the broader issue. I want to see what's being affected by this ordinance here. So, because we went through this free speech thing years ago, and the outcome was that we were not able to necessarily control or keep from people soliciting on the corners of some of these streets. So we need to make sure that we're in compliance with whatever we need to be in compliance with.
Mayor, I think there are things that are happening there that we've never had happen before. I mean, these businesses are being encroached on. The businesses are right now. So that's where this came from. It's not anything we've ever had before.
Thank you, Alderman Martin.
Mr.
Any
Mayor,
other comments?
I do have a comment.
Go ahead, Alderman Vice Mayor Berger.
Yeah, well, I think it's Clyde, what the law allows according to our ordinances, actually. But, what we decided on. And one of the things it says in here about street vendors, people that distribute anything or any activity of distributing, I'm not saying impede the right to your First Amendment rights, absolutely not. But it said within the public right of way that contribute to the overall character of Franklin. I'm sorry. I fought this a long time, and I don't believe it. You all may think it adds to the character of Franklin. I do not. I think it takes away, because we have still issues that we can't control, and we don't control very well, and we can't, because we can't have police officers at those corners all the time. And it happens a ton in Cold Springs. Still happens. I see it all the time. I never report it anymore because it's useless. I can't report it because it just gets reported. And, the group who's out there or whatever, they try to take care of it. And I mean, they have responded. Don't get me wrong. They have responded. But we can't always be there. And they are still stepping into the street. We still have people stepping into the streets. And we've got issues with that. And I don't think we can ever get rid of that issue. So I don't agree with it contributing to the overall character, because we have those kinds of issues with it. The 50 feet, I'm good with that. And I understand why this ordinance has come. I think Margaret's right. We're having different issues right now than we had before. Putting up more signs. I mean, honestly, the city, it's a catch-22. Sometimes the city is the biggest, presence of signs, that we put up signs all the time. So we're always putting up signs. We have to put up signs that are at roundabouts. We have to put up signs over here and signs over there. So it's like one more sign for one more thing. I'm like, yeah. I just wish we didn't have to put up another sign. But then if we didn't, then the people wouldn't know. So how do we get around that? I'm not sure there's an answer to that. I would definitely support this, because I think there are places that are having some issues with this. And there may even be one or two in Cold Springs as well. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, could I just
Go ahead, Mr. Stuckey. I'm sorry.
I just want to get a quick sense of the board on this. The request for a map seems like it would be very, very helpful to you. Would you like us to bring this back to work session with the map for more discussion, or put it on the vote with the map, or do it on both agendas? I just want to make sure you're comfortable with how we position this on May 11th. If you just want it back on the work session, put it on both agendas, or put it on for voting session only. Just give us some feedback on that if you could.
I would say put it on the work session, and also specifically invite the people who would be regulated, or the representatives of the people who would be most directly regulated.
All right, we'll make sure that those that have the outside cafe licenses and those that might be involved in the street vending activity as well.
I would also agree with that too.
All right, thank you.
I would too. But I also, did Dana said both agendas? Did you say, Dana? I don't know, but I'd be
Just
fine.
the work session.
No, just work session.
I'd be fine to put it on work session and voting session at the same time. As long as we had opportunity to discuss it that night. Well, we could always defer it if we were uncomfortable with it, but I'd put it on both.
Okay, you got enough direction there?
Thank you.
Item 15 is City of Franklin Contract 2021-0072, sanitary sewer reimbursement agreement with Ford Classic Homes for reimbursement of expenses related to installation of a sanitary sewer interceptor for the meadows at Southbrook, the property located immediately west of the Chadwell PUD.
Thank you, Mayor. You may recall recently the Chadwell PUD and sanitary sewer, parkland, and road impact fee agreements were recently approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And this relates directly to the installation of the sanitary sewer interceptor, in which the cost of this installation will be divided three ways between Boyle and the Chadwell development. Ford Homes, who's working on the adjacent, the meadows at Southbrook, which is closer to Lewisburg, and the City of Franklin to get this essential infrastructure installed within a specific time frame, each paying approximately $275,000 towards the $750,000 or so installation.
Questions or comments? Item 16, request from Meritage Homes to enter into a cost-sharing agreement for the construction of Market Street between Clovercroft Road and Highway 96 in conjunction with developing the pending Poplar Farms PUD.
Thank you again, Mayor, Alderman. Chris Cowan, I'm hoping is with us. I haven't looked at all the attendees at the work session, and I'm assuming he's on the line and will want to talk about his request for participating in the installation of Market Street. That essentially extends from Clovercroft all the way to Highway 96, Murfreesboro Road, and the illustration is shown here. A portion of that road is already constructed, a small portion. Meritage Homes is in the process of obtaining approval for a new PUD called Poplar Farms. And this is a development of about 546 residential dwelling units on the Ingraham Stovall property that many of you are familiar with. The total cost is outlined in your packet to complete this collector road, which is on the major thoroughfare plan in Connect Franklin, is approximately, and these numbers I want to emphasize are rough estimates at this point for the sake of a discussion, is about $11,000. All said, Meritage Homes is asking for the city to participate in a 50-50 split of the installation of this road, which is about $5,600 or $5.6 million, excuse me.
Thank you.
That the city would participate less the collector fees estimated to be for the 546 homes of $1.8 million. So the city's out-of-pocket cost for the sake of this discussion would be approximately $3.8 million. City staff has evaluated this situation. We believe that that Clovercroft Road needs attention first and foremost. And Paul Holzen can elaborate if you have any questions. As we included an illustration in your board packet, and as many of you know, the county and the city each have property ownership of that road. And to improve that road from Wilson Pike all the way to Murfreesboro Road would likely cost in the neighborhood of $70 million. So the complexity of working with the county, perhaps considering phasing the improvements to Clovercroft Road before allowing any more development on Clovercroft Road would be quite an undertaking, as you can expect. But we also make this recommendation based on the work that's going on presently by TDOT in improving Highway 96, essentially from Arno Road all the way to Wilson Pike. And that work, if you've been out that way, is ongoing, making great progress. But that'll increase capacity of Murfreesboro Road for that section, which will likely trigger some property owners interested in moving forward with development, which actually coincides with the county's initiative to undertake a discussion for a comprehensive growth plan in Williamson County as in the months ahead. So I'll leave you with one additional thought. This is not an uncommon request that comes up from developers regarding a road network that aligns with our major transportation plan. Even last week, we had a request from Goodhall Homes for a similar request, not as quite as large as from Heritage Home, to participate similarly in the improvement of section of Del Rio. So I leave you with that, and I know Chris will want to offer his comments as well. Thank you.
Did Mr. Holzen want to make a comment before I recognize Mr. Cowan?
No, sir. Vernon did a great job.
Okay, great. Chris, welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vernon. Good evening, board. As Vernon said, we currently have the two parcels. Well, I'll step back a little bit. As when we brought the proposed project to the board for consideration of annexation, we just had the Ingraham parcel that was just a piece of this puzzle or landmass in between Clovercroft and Highway 96. I think during those times there was certainly discussion about, well, while it would be ideally it would be nice to get Market Street pulled all the way through from its current end to 96. And we were fortunate to get the Stovall property under contract, which allows that opportunity. As we've continued to study on the plan and work through the land planning with staff and work towards presenting this to Planning Commission, Market Street has been a continual topic, as well as Clovercroft. As Vernon mentioned, we believe the cost of Market Street is in the neighborhood of $11–12 million based on our engineering studies. The project will generate about 1.8 in collector road fees. Pretty heavy burden on the property. We do understand it's a part of the major thoroughfare, and in looking at, and while it's lower down on the ladder than Clovercroft and some of the other improvements in this area of the city, feel like that now the opportunity with having the connectivity and land from Clovercroft and 96, it's an achievable project. It's not inexpensive, but it's something that can be achieved in a reasonably short period of time because the right-of-way is controlled. It's new construction, not anywhere near the level of difficulty, as Vernon referenced on Clovercroft, just of widening an existing road that's already in pretty poor shape, and then not to mention the complexities of working through the county right-of-way situation and how those responsible parties would take care of the cost for that. So we just still feel like this is versus, an opportunity for us to partner with the city, have this project brought in at a, significantly reduced cost than versus if the city were to undertake this someday in the future, and appreciate the consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions about the project or the road itself.
I think Mr. Girth had another comment.
I did. Thank you, Chris. I believe these are relevant comments I should have included. I had included them in the memorandum. First of all, Market Street isn't in the top 70 capital projects as looked at recently with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in their prioritization exercise. And as you know, for collector road impact fees, those fees need to stay in the service area. This road being in service area 1, we presently have a balance of approximately $3 million. About $500,000 of that is already allocated for a project. But I thought I'd share those two pieces of information as you deliberate on this as well. Thank you.
I have a question.
Vernon, is it 44 or have the rankings changed? I think last I saw Market Street and Connect Franklin was still of 44.
I think we're referring to the capital investment
Okay,
priority.
all right.
The board set, which is different. And I think the primary reason is that has generally been viewed as would be development driven and funded. The collector fee that's in place helps offset it some, but not to the tune that is being requested.
Go ahead, Alderman Martin.
If I remember correctly, when we first started talking about this area, we said that the development would not take place without Market Street being connected because Clovercroft was in such bad shape. Now, when I look at this map, not only is Market Street not done, but Clovercroft Road still just has a little black mark there. I don't really know what that means, but it's certainly not enhancing the entire road. And I don't really know what's been done. All these people that we're hearing from who are opposing this, are they just opposed to any development at all there? Or are they just upset about the roads? I don't know, Chris. What can you answer that?
Yes, I can speculate a little. We've had a couple of neighborhood meetings, both formal and informal. I would say Watkins Creek is probably one of the more vocal of our neighbors. I think as with all new residential development, there's a general consensus of just not wanting anything, and certainly a big challenge for the city and the county right now with the growth that we have of how to handle that and how to do it wisely. There's been general opposition to growth, and then I think secondarily behind that has been the actual location of Market Street within the property. We have it pushed over towards the eastern side of the property adjacent to Watkins Creek. That's more topography driven or that's largely topography driven with the requirements through the engineering and public works for the design of the road. We did with Watkins Creek demonstrated that there's we had a cross section in there that demonstrated how far away the road would be from the shared property line, and then from the actual rear of the lots and from the actual rear of the homes. And if I remember right, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, I want to say a football field was about the distance from the rear of the Watkins Creek lots. So it's been a mixture of opposition.
I appreciate that. I really don't want that. That's too much knowledge. What I need to know is the road is not finished. Market Street's not finished. And it was my understanding that that was going to be done first. I don't know where maybe I dreamed that, but I don't know anything about that area out there except what I thought I had heard, that Market Street was going to take care of all that development and that growth. Market Street going from what, north to south or south to north or something. Anyway, when I'm looking at this, it's not done and neither is Clovercroft Road. And so I've been against Clovercroft Road the entire time because I just don't think that can handle any more traffic.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, this is really a tough one. There's quite a few things. First of all, this Market Street, even though it's on our thoroughfare plan, has not been in our top priorities because there was no need. Usually we don't do that until it's developer driven or something's happening in the area. So now we have Amelia Park. Now we have Taproot Hills. Now we have this proposal before us. So it's time to move that up on the list because development is happening in the area. It has been happening for a few years now. And I can't tell you how many homes are in Amelia Park, but a few hundred maybe. And then Taproot Hills, same, 100 and some, I think. And then with this development as a proposed development. So that's why it's not been moved up. It's time for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to look at this because development is happening. And roads don't get finished up front. They just don't. We wait till development happens and then it should happen in tandem. Great example of it never happening in tandem years ago, as we all know, and as we've heard till we're overhearing about it, is McEwen 4. We allowed years ago McKay's Mill and the back part of McKay's Mill to be built, Avalon to be built, Mead of Avalon to be built, Breezeway to be built, and then Chardonnay in the county, all being built without taking in the money and addressing that road. And so all those developments happened and that road never got done. Now we are on it and we are doing that road. So we have a similar situation. For the life of me, I'm looking at this map. For the life of me, I can't understand why it is $77 million when McEwen is so much harder and the terrain is so much worse on McEwen than it is on Clovercroft. So that is a $37 million project. This is a $77 million project. That blows me away. I can't believe that's true. But maybe the distance is definitely greater, and I'm not sure how much distance is greater. Paul Holzen, you might be able to answer that. So anyway, back to this whole gamut of this development and the road. We're talking about Market Street. Market Street's on the agenda right now. So what do? It's in our thoroughfare plan. We want it done. It's a smart thing to do. We've got 96 right below it, touching it, and 96 is being 4-laned right now as we speak. It's being constructed. So it is smart to do Market Street. I'm glad that they're looking at Market Street and pulling that in. But Margaret's absolutely right. We have got a problem with Clovercroft. Now, be patient with me here. A couple years ago, I asked that we look at Clovercroft. I asked that we bring it into the city. Whether that was wise or not, we had a discussion. Eric, you and I had that discussion. And also it was discussed, well, if it's county, city road, why don't we partner with Williamson County and get Williamson County to do the portion that's county, we do the portion that's city. And then if Taproot Farms comes in, that will be more of the city as well. So at some point. So I'm looking at this saying it's not wise planning if we are not going to take a look at Clovercroft Road. Now, is it wise to annex it all in and put it all under us? Will the county partner with us on the county sections? And will they help the people over here? Not so much the city. Will they help the people in the county over here and all the people that drive on these roads, along with the city, and partner with us to get this road addressed and get this road built out properly. Because we have a boatload of traffic. And when 96 gets done, people are going to want Market Street, 96 Clovercroft. There's going to be a need for this. A couple things I've thought about. Number one, we have Vernon, what is it? It's a collector road. So we've got Market Street designated as a collector road right now. Would we consider, maybe this is a wise thing to do, that we abandon Market Street as a collector and make it a residential and put it internally to a development, whether it's this development or a development in the future. Let's talk about development in general of this farm, because someday it's going to happen. So why don't we do it internally and put it into a residential road like Oxford Glen? And then the people in Watkins Creek that wants the larger homes with the larger lots, buy them. So you have a Watkins Creek instead of right here, Watkins Creek and Market Street. You have Watkins Creek, you have bigger homes, bigger lots, and you have an internal road through that development. So that would possibly be something we could look at. We would take the impact fees, the road impact fees from that, and the other fees that they would put towards Market Street, and let them build Market Street as a residential road through a development, whether it be this development or another development down the road in the future. I just want to talk in general right now. So that would be something I would throw out to us for a discussion. And also that might reduce the number of homes in there, making some larger lots and some larger homes up against the Watkins Creek subdivision. So that would probably change their plans and change their development as well, and maybe bring in a better development with less homes. Anyway, I believe those would be the comments I would offer this evening.
Any other alderman want to make a comment?
Mayor, I would like to say something.
And I would too.
Go ahead, Alderman Shore, then I'll get to Alderman Barnhill.
You know, I think we need to look at this really long term. I have no doubt that Clovercroft is at least 70 million, if not 100 million. The right-of-way acquisition costs on that road will be astronomical just to begin with. Not so much on Market Street. That's going to be all donated. And I think what we need to realize is if once, and Clovercroft at some point in time is going to have to be done with all the growth that's there, and it's going to continue. And can you imagine the nightmare of getting from that side, McKay's Mill, et cetera, trying to go through Clovercroft when it's under construction for 3 years, probably? Where are those people where are they going to go? There's really no other outlet to 96 for sure. They had to go through McKay's Mill to get to Liberty Pike to get out to go somewhere. We have an opportunity as a city for an additional $3.5 million to get a great outlet from Clovercroft over to Highway 96, which will be done by the time Market Street would be finished, and then put less pressure on Clovercroft, which will give everybody an opportunity to maybe get to use that road. But in addition, maybe we can then look at doing Clovercroft with an already outlet there that's being paid for mostly, or at least, 2/3 of it by somebody else. I think it's short-sighted if we turn this down and try not to do it just because of the inconvenience and the hardships going to go to the people that live out there when Clovercroft is finally under construction. It will be a nightmare. And without any outlet, we're in trouble. And that's all I got to say.
Alderman Barnhill.
I'll ditto Alderman Shore's comment on that, and also say, this is an opportunity to leverage money. It's an opportunity for us to have a road that may have not been on our long-range plans, but certainly something that we've discussed. I know Vice Mayor Berger's brought this up numerous times over the last several years. I think we need to really look at this and make sure that we're not passing up an opportunity for a long-range improvement to the city of Franklin and to the road work that we have here, knowing full well that Clovercroft needs to be upgraded, but you've got Highway 96 now that is being upgraded by the state. If those two could connect somewhere or another at approximately the same time, I think would be a tremendous asset and a tremendous benefit to the city of Franklin and in our long range plan. And for that, especially for that particular area there, I know that there are probably people listening that are saying, we can't stand any more traffic and we can't stand this, we can't stand that. And, you know, I'm not unsympathetic to that, but I am saying that we need to look strongly at what we're getting, where it's going, and the fact that we can leverage several $1 million in funding to get a road that's tremendously needed in the long run for the city of Franklin.
I think Mr. Stuckey wants to make a comment if everybody else is finished, and I'm a little bit confused maybe because I think my concern is all of a sudden we're going to have a whole bunch of developments wanting us to build their roads. We just had one that wanted us to build their road, and I think probably there are others that are lining up right now if we consider doing this. But I'd like some policy clarification if I could.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we have to enter into that. I'm just saying the road itself is extremely important, and we don't need to pass up the opportunity, whatever the funding is, and however we work that out.
Mr. Stuckey?
Yeah, I'd offer a couple comments just as we think about this. You've got a framework that exists that's in place through the road impact fee structure. The board acted several years ago to add collectors to that. That helps put some other capacity in the game. I think we need, as you look at this, I think it's important to think about if you want to go beyond what the impact fee provides for, you know, what's going to guide that? Because you may end up then playing, let's make a deal on every roadway that goes into a neighborhood. And you know, you may, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is an opportunity to leverage dollars potentially, but you do open the potential that you're also going to hear this every time there's a road. There's like, well, you know, let's go to the city and see what kind of deal we can cut. And I think the other element of that is how do you want to incorporate that from a policy standpoint? So there is some guidelines on how you're going to work with that and how, if you're going to put more in, what's going to guide putting more in. And then we are in the process of updating our capital investment plan and where we're at. It would seem appropriate to put this in the mix with that. And maybe this is the next place you want to spend $3.8 million or whatever the number is exactly, but maybe it's not. And, you know, I think putting it in the context of other community needs and broader benefits and those kind of discussions would seem to make sense as well. And we're not that far away from having some of those discussions later in the year. So that's another piece to think about. But I think there is some things to think about how this fits into the rest of your structure and other requests you might get and how you want to manage that and what guidelines you might want to provide as we consider that.
Also, let me just add one more thing that, you know, we also have to consider what we're talking about here, not just the road, but what kind of development we're talking about in the numbers. One of the things that I've heard from many people, it's not that we're against development, but 560 some homes on this piece of property and going down Clovercroft and not having many outlets, that's a tough thing. That is a tough thing. I have personally a big problem with the numbers. I've told Chris that a number of times, but they've got a tough property. They've got a lot of utilities. They've got gas lines to go under. There's a lot of area that can't be used. It's a beautiful piece of property, but it's a tough piece of property. And I don't disagree with Clyde. You know, the fact that, you know, I think that that's what we try to do. We should be partnering with people to get, we put this on our thoroughfare plan. We put these roads up on our thoroughfare plan and we want them done. And we say we plan for these. And then we have an opportunity to be able to do that. But then if we say, okay, we will partner and we accept that, then we saying, yes, we also approve and are okay with 560 some homes. I have a lot of constituents that are not okay with 560 some homes. I personally have a problem with that as well, because that's a boatload of houses and a boatload of traffic, and in an area that I'm not sure can handle it. So those are my comments on that.
Mayor, may I make a quick statement?
Go ahead, Mr. Holson.
I just wanted to reiterate what Vernon said, is every time a developer comes in, they're always asking us to contribute more than the fees to the necessary and required improvements. It happens over and over again. And as staff, that's hard. And we have a lot of debates internally about what to do, because the intent of the collector fee is to pay for the roadways. However, what we do tell them is that the board has voted on a priority and that our funding should be directed towards those priorities. In this case, Jordan Road is the one funded road in that quadrant. So knowing that the fees are in excess in this area, we looked at it from a staff view as to which would be the next priority in our opinion, in our view. And that would be Clovercroft, because of the rural roadway that it is. There's vertical and horizontal alignment issues. It's going to be an extremely expensive project. And that was our opinion as to where we should direct our funds to in the future. I do agree with what Alderman Shore said, that Market Street would be a great outlet for when we do build Clovercroft Road. However, the way we look at these is if the development cannot fund the necessary infrastructure, then it may not be time for the development to move forward until we can get the infrastructure completed. But I wanted to just reiterate what Vernon said, is that every time a developer comes in and the improvements exceed the fee, they are always asking us to contribute extra. And we have a lot of internal debates about how to do that fairly and appropriately. And we generally will use the board's priority projects. Thank you.
Mayor, let me just say one more thing. Maybe 560 homes is too much. I agree with Alderman Berger. I think that's ridiculous. And if you can't get that in with the infrastructure that we have and the roads, then we'll have to cut down on that number. Also, back to Market Street, it was my understanding, it was never mentioned that the city would put in a dime of that would be done as part of the development. And I think we need to stick to that. As Eric said, we get calls all the time for this. We just turned down one. And that is on the developer's mind to start with, that we would partner. We don't have that kind of money. And I really support letting the impact fees take care of that, of our portion for that.
Mayor, one final comment for me. Yeah, I'm not advocating that we enter into a 50-50. I'm advocating for the construction of Market Street, because I think it's super important. How we get there, whether it's a completely funded developer street, which is $11 million, no impact fees going to that other than what they're paying in, I'm fine with that. I have no qualms on that. I'm just suggesting to you that for long range, for the planning, for the amount of traffic we anticipate out there, Market Street is a very, very valuable, very, very important street. How it gets there is it's up to another discussion as far as I'm concerned. So that's just my comment on that.
I would ditto what Clyde just said. And I think it is an important road, very important, because I do like to look down the road at the future. What I don't want somebody 20, 25 years later coming back and says, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? Because that's what we had with McEwen. And so it's very difficult not to consider that road at all. But at the same time, someone mentioned if a developer can't afford the road, maybe it's not the right time. I think that was Paul or somebody. So, those are legitimate questions.
Item 17, resolution.
I'm sorry.
Can I go ahead and read that? And then you
I
can
jumped
talk.
the gun.
Resolution 2021-37, declaring the city will accept a third phase of community development block grant coronavirus CDBG CV funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that the city will spend these funds by partnering with local agencies to reimburse them for expenses incurred to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus.
Good afternoon. This is just to let you know the city has been awarded a third round of CARES Act funds in the amount of $513,530, which brings our grand total to $727,319 in CARES Act funds. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Mayor, may I?
Go ahead, Alderman Blanton. I'm sorry.
So in reading the resolution, I could not understand if you'd already identified the recipients of the third round, or this was just to say that it was being announced. I wasn't quite sure of that.
It is just being announced. We're exploring the options.
Understand. Thank you so much for the clarification.
We'll move on to item 18. Update and discussion of stormwater general and emergency services capital investment projects.
And I know we're getting close to our time. This will not be a real lengthy one, but we've been trying over the last several months to each month bring you a grouping of capital projects, give you an update where we are with them, original budget within the CIP capital investment program, and what we're looking at this stage as we talk about updating, refreshing our 10-year CIP in the coming months. So I think Paul's going to walk you through this quickly.
All right, I want to try to get through this as quick as I can. So first project, Battle Avenue. The project is complete. Final project cost was about $1.5 million. It looks great over there. We've significantly reduced the flood risk to all the surrounding properties, which is great that we're completed with that project. Next one is the Maplewood Stormwater Project. We had a failing 72-inch RCP corrugated metal culvert. We could not dig and replace, so we lined it with an HDPE pipe and grouted in between it. That project is complete at around $470,000. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers home raising project. It originally started with 26 homes, so our estimate was around $2.7 million. Due to petitions from numerous property owners, we're now at 35 eligible homes. It's unknown how many will actually participate. We're now estimating about $4.9 million for the total project cost. And it should be noted that our proportionate share of that, should all the houses go forward, is currently estimated at $867,000. The next one is the Fifth Avenue parking lot. It looks amazing over there compared to the gravel lot that it was. We'd originally budgeted around $500,000 for it. Our final cost was about $211,000. This next one I'm going to let Vernon talk about briefly is our City Hall project.
Thank you, Paul and Alderman. We're in the process, the initial process of the design phase, which you approved last year, and that will carry us through the end of the year, at which time we're going to come back to you with some conceptual plans and a request and an estimate to proceed with phase 2, which is the schematic design, which will take about a year. We're also going to do work this summer to evaluate construction costs in much more detail in Middle Tennessee. The estimates that we had originally earmarked for City Hall and a parking structure, which total about $32,600,000, we know are dated. So we're going to do an in-depth analysis to let you know what similar structures are costing, so we can, as we move through this multi-year project, we're honing in when we get to the point of releasing any documents to bid that you know exactly what the cost will be. Thank you.
And the last project is Fire Station number 7. My understanding from Brad Wilson is that they're still working through the last punch list, but for all intents and purposes, it's mostly complete. This one originally was estimated at $4.1 million, and right now, based on funding from or documents from finance, it looks like we're about $6.9 million.
Let me just chime in on that, Paul. We have Franklin firefighters sleeping and working from this fire station tonight for the first time.
And I didn't know if it was complete or not, talking with Brad, because it seemed like he was ready to be done with it. Just getting the punch list stuff done.
We got firefighters in it tonight.
That's awesome. That concludes the presentation. If there's any questions on these projects, we're happy to answer them.
You're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much.
There's
You and all the rest of them.
Yeah, there's a big team that works on it. It's definitely not me.
Okay, we're going to shut the meeting down and get ready for a 7 o'clock meeting. And we will have an executive session tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Could you just clarify again on 16? I did get your message, but I wasn't sure that that was it. To clarify what our action was on item 16 with the Clovercroft Market Street. Where are we headed on that? What are we going to do? Eric, are we going to CIC on that? CIP?
I'd suggest you work it into the update of your CIP that we'll be looking at later this year when we look at what kind of capacity is used with existing approved projects. And if there's additional capacity, and if that's where you want to allocate it, you can give that direction.
Okay, so what direction are you giving the developer right now? Because I know they came to us so that does not give them an answer in some ways, but I want to clarify that because I think they're going to have some kind of direction of what they're doing. So how does that play out?
I don't think it's wise to commit to it when you haven't looked at your other needs and your capacity overall. I think an answer will come when we look at the bigger picture. I think you heard a mixed bag of direction on it tonight, quite frankly, and then you've got the broader capacity question. So I think working through that and giving the board a chance to answer that more fully based on where the CIP stands and where capacity, if capacity is available, where you choose to allocate it.
So the answer to the question that the developer brought to us tonight is wait and see, or, get back to us in 6 months? Are we putting them on? We're not putting them on hold, but I guess we're putting them on hold as far as the answer. And if they want to proceed with full cost and everything, they would have to come back to us. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's a path forward based on the standard process as defined by the impact fees and the way we handle the standard way we handle it. That's an option available to them.
All right.
Or they can proceed with that in mind, knowing that the board could decide to add some additional participation down the line.
As long as that is made clear to them. I just want to make sure somebody makes that clear to them if they would. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.